Yay. Hi. Facebook has a new setting for the live, so I think that this is working. Just a new format that I'm not used to. So I just want to see if I can look on my phone and be like super meta, be like looking at me right here, right now. Let me see if I can find this. Um, let's see. I don't know. I hope it's working. Um, yeah. Okay, awesome. I think we're working. I think we're live, you guys. I think we're live. Awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, great. So, welcome. It's Wednesday. Um, it is 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on the East Coast, and it is April 22nd, 2020. And I am grateful to be here with you today discussing um, a topic that is so important and so critical. And it's time for us to discuss self-compassion. So, thank you so much for joining me live and watching the replay. This is it's a really beautiful, really important topic, and just looking forward to diving into talking about self-compassion. And just going to take a couple of sips of my tea, gather my strength, look at these cute hearts. So, welcome everyone. My name is Alyssa Abrahamson, and I'm a nutritional therapist and wellness coach. And I am so happy that you're here. Today, we're going to be discussing self-compassion. And earlier this month, I instead of doing my workshops that I was doing weekly in February and March, for the first week in April, I decided to do hula hooping. Just keep it short and sweet and read the affirmation of the day and do hula hooping. And then last Saturday, I had a colleague and friend of mine, Pinky Special, teach a hooping class, which was so much fun. And I just was really, really, really needing to move my body and laugh and play and be creative. And that was super fun, and still incorporating all of that into my life. But I'm back today and next Wednesday, and also will be back on Wednesdays in May, doing having conversations and discussions about really relevant topics that are hopefully really meaningful and inspiring and educational for you as we are navigating our lives. So, all right. So today I really want to focus on self-compassion. And so, what's wonderful and amazing is that these terms like self-care and self-love have become really popular practices recently. In the past handful of years, we kind of see, hashtag self-care, hashtag self-love, or people just being like self-care, self-love. And that's beautiful and wonderful and totally necessary. But what I personally really focus on for myself, and I really would like to address and guide you through, is this concept of self-compassion. So before we dive into self-compassion, I just really want to first just acknowledge and talk about self-care and self-love, which most people are generally, they're just a little bit more popular terms. So and all of these, self-care is, and same with self-love, like different definitions. But so if we think about what's the definition of self-care, I'd be actually super curious if you have like a self-care practice, or there's something that you do that you believe for you is really self-care, that if you would just share it in the comments, I would love to see what you think. So when we're thinking about self-care, so self-care is like an activity that you do deliberately, and it's in order to take care of your mental, emotional, and physical health. So self-care it's a practice, and it's a practice of taking action to preserve and improve your health. So, there's some people who really, consider like taking a bubble bath or getting a pedicure as self-care. And yes, absolutely, that is taking care of yourself. For others, um, self-care is doing your taxes in March, not rushing and really taking time and being thorough and not procrastinating on that. Or self-care is being really consistent in meal prepping and cooking really healthy meals for yourself or your family. So moving on to self-love. So what's the definition of self-love? So just as self-care is different for each person, self-love is something that is very unique to each individual. So thinking about self-love. So self-love is like it's like having regard for your own happiness and well-being. And self-love motivates you to make healthy choices in life. Self-love is about self-acceptance, and self-love means that you're really understanding your needs and honoring them. I think that's pretty huge, right? Hey, Trinity! Yay! Hi! Oh, I'm so happy you're here. I'm reading off of notes on my computer, so I just wanted to quickly go back to the live to see if I can see the peeps. So now moving on to what's the definition of self-compassion. Well, so self-compassion, like I said earlier, I think so many of us are very familiar with, self-care and self-love, but self-compassion is so huge and it's so important to me, and it's totally what I advocate. And so self-compassion is really being kind and gentle with yourself in your mind and in your action and your deeds. So it's really turning love and acceptance and understanding inward. So self-compassion is when you extend compassion to yourself in instances of like perceived inadequacy, perceived failure, and perceived suffering. So, and this is so huge. I talk about this all the time. Self-compassion is listening to maybe the negative or detrimental thoughts in your mind without judgment. So that's huge, right? Not judging ourselves. To me, that's self-compassion work. So self-compassion is, when you say to yourself, oh my gosh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, and then you're kind of beating yourself in your mind. Self-compassion is learning to let go of that really shameful and hurtful language of shoulding yourself. So, during this wild time that we're living in right now, and it doesn't even matter, it could be any time. Like, I'll just give an example for myself. Lots of times in my lifetime, during the coronavirus or not, it could be a beautiful sunny day and I'm laying on my couch. I just want to lay on the couch. And I feel so guilty for not taking advantage of this beautiful sunny day. I'm like, oh my God, I should go outside. Oh my God, I should go for a walk. I should go to the park. And then I feel like crap. And so self-compassion is allowing yourself to be where you're at and to take that day and rest on the couch and not feel like you, quote, should go to the park or should get that sun. If you're really not up to it, that's okay. So self-compassion is not shooting on yourself when like right now, it's like there's so many free classes, for example. And a lot of people, not as many people too, some people are still working full time and their jobs got even harder and they're working, 14 hours instead of 10 hours. So everyone's life is totally, changed and different, or maybe it's the same, but there's, I'm just seeing lots of friends or, people in my community that are, or family that are feeling like, oh my God, there's all these free online classes and I should be doing this and I should be doing that, but I'm not. So self-compassion again is taking that word should out and thinking that detrimental thought and just choosing what's important to you and actually what you do want to put your energy towards. And if that's not, taking a class, that's fine. If it's not, learning a new hobby during quarantine, that's fine. So self-compassion is letting go of feeling guilty for feeling happy when others are suffering. Self-compassion is watching Netflix all day when you're guilt-free. Self-compassion is basically like when you are opening your heart to yourself, just as much as you're opening your heart to your best friends or your loved ones. And then when you're doing that and you're opening your heart to yourself and bringing your self-compassion just as much as you would do to your best friend, then literally you are bringing healing to yourself and to the world. So for me, healthy, being healthy and coping and healing is all about self-compassion. So literally when we're in a global pandemic or not. Oh yay, checkmate Darcy. Oh, awesome. Guys, I'm just looking at notes, and so I just wanted a quick pop over to the live just to check in and say hi. And I'm going back to my notes. So again, self-compassion, like healthy coping and when you're healing is all about self-compassion. So again, doesn't matter. This is like literally we can take self-compassion just into our lives no matter where we're at. So I believe that when you practice self-compassion, that then, and you really work on self-compassion, then self-love and self-care follow. I think a lot of us sometimes struggle with that, how self-care has become really superficial. And there's so many amazing things that you can do to take care of yourself. But I think that when we take the time to really, really, and takes work, you guys, I've been working on this for years, self-compassion and not judging myself and being super kind and gentle with myself. But when I believe that when we work on self-compassion, then things, over time can really fade away, those kinds of like, I should be doing that, or like, oh my God, I'm not this, I'm not that. And then that acceptance that we gain and that we work on to accept ourselves, literally self-love and self-care follow. So there is, you know what, let me just pop over here for a sec. So I just want to actually just ask another question. Like, are you guys familiar with the concept of self-compassion and like what, like, is it something that you have been practicing or working on? Or when you think about taking care of yourself, is it more kind of like, what's like an activity or something that I could do? And, all of these things, self-love, self-care, self-compassion, they're all so interconnected. Like setting up boundaries for ourselves, a boundary could be, I am going to take 3 deep breaths before I start every meal. And that's a self-care practice, I think, when you're getting into that state of like eating a meal with intention and mindfulness. So anyway, I'm just curious, like what, if you guys have like a self-care, self-love, self-compassion, what resonates to you, or what might you do? Just love to hear. So there's this book I read about a year ago when I started like really being it was maybe a couple of years ago, into this concept of self-compassion. And it just so resonated with me. This woman named Kristin Neff, she has done a ton of research in self-compassion. She's wonderful. I've listened to her on a bunch of podcasts. I've read her book. So she has this, she's an author of a book called Self-Compassion, The Proven Power to Being Kind to Yourself. So I could cry right now because the amount of like mean things that I've said in my life to myself, and I know we can all relate, we've all been there, is just unacceptable. It's absolutely unacceptable how we treat ourselves in our mind. And that's why I believe that self-compassion is number one priority. I mean, there's so many priorities, but it is so critical to consider this concept of self-compassion and really work on it. So Kristen Neff, she has this book. It's called Self-Compassion: The Proven Power of Being Kind to Yourself. So who doesn't want to be more kind to yourself? I want to be more kind to myself. So she, in her book, she states that self-compassion tells three core components. So the first, self-compassion requires self-kindness. Self-compassion requires self-kindness, that we're gentle and understanding with ourselves, rather than being harshly critical and judgmental. Okay, raise your hand if you've been harshly critical or judgmental and with yourself. I've lived, I've come a long, long way, thank God. But so again, Kristen Neff says there are three components of self-compassion. There are three core components. The first one is self-compassion requires self-kindness. So learning to be gentle and understanding with ourselves rather than being harsh and critical and judgmental. Okay, so her second component is self-compassion requires recognition for our common humanity. Feeling connected with others in the experience of life rather than feeling isolated and alienated by our suffering. Okay, I'm literally about to start crying right now. I'm just going to read that again. So her second core component of self-compassion is common humanity. So self-compassion requires recognition of our common humanity, feeling connected with others in the experience of life, rather than feeling isolated and alienated by our suffering. So I just want to pause on that and just talk about that for a second, and just focusing on what's happening in the world right now, because I think that what's just so bizarre and crazy is that, we're all living through this, and we all just have different experiences with coping with the crisis and handling that, or different stressors and anxiety, and we're learning different ways. So just what's so interesting is, so my dad died in 2013, and once he died, I was like, okay, I'm a part of the Dead Dads Club, and I was like, okay, I know what it's like to have a dead dad and to have lost a parent. And I felt like, wow, okay. I felt connected to other people who had lost parents, as compassionate as we can be. And oh my God, we have such capacity to be empathetic and passionate towards other people. And what we're talking about now is being compassionate towards ourselves, which is so, so important. But I just remember thinking, wow, I feel way more comfortable talking to people who have lost a parent. I feel like I have this depth of understanding. It's not necessarily more compassion, but that just like common experience. Whereas if you haven't lost a parent, it's just a different experience. And I don't want anyone to lose anyone in their life. But I think for me, that was the first time I'd really lost someone very, very close to me. I'd lost, grandparents, but for me, just a parent was different. And so now we're in this like coronavirus sitchy, and we're all in this like madness together. So we do have this common humanity. However, everyone has different circumstances and situations, and everyone has different ways of coping. But, it's really like that, even if we might, I've absolutely felt jealous of people who had it. The way I thought, like, better, like, oh my God, people who have laundry machines, or, people who have backyards, or, whatever. I'm envious of that, because that's something that I don't have in my small apartment in Brooklyn. So, but going back to having compassion for myself for feeling that, and not just shutting it down, and then realizing like this common humanity, that not comparing ourselves, and like feeling connected in this experience of life. That is that we are literally like all one. Oh God, I'm gonna cry. It's like so important. So, Kristen, that's the third component of self-compassion. So self-compassion requires mindfulness. Okay, so self-compassion requires mindfulness, that we hold our experience in balanced awareness rather than ignoring our pain or exaggerating it. Okay. Who here has ignored their pain or exaggerated it? Me? Oh my God. Like, holy crap. I have certainly ignored my pain in ways that were really unhealthy. And I have absolutely exaggerated my pain because I was like, I'm in so much pain and people don't understand and they need to understand my suffering. And neither, I mean, both, we're human. It's like, it's all like, acceptable. And it's like, fine, go there, but like, don't dwell and don't stew in that. So it's really just so self-compassion requires mindfulness, and that we hold our experience in this balanced awareness. So not ignoring it, not exaggerating it, just being like, okay, this experience is happening, and really sitting with it and being open to it and allowing it to like feel it and go through us, and not one extreme or the other. And that's a practice. So again, Kristen Neff, her book is called Self-Compassion: The Proof and Power of Being Kind to Yourself, and she offers these three components: self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. And I think that that is like just a really beautiful way to think about self-compassion, as I hope that you're considering, like, how can I take care of myself right now? I mean, how can we take care of ourselves at any point in our lives? But a lot of us are maybe needing some more compassionate thoughts to ourselves right now. And what I always really go back to is, what are we thinking to ourselves in our mind? What do we say to ourselves over and over again all day long? And if you've been following me in like my different workshops, or you're a client of mine, or a friend or whatever, like, I'm sure you've probably heard me say, and just thinking about some of my teachers like Louise Hay, or Brooke Castillo from the Life Coach School, that are that it's only a thought, and a thought can be changed, and that's Louise Hay's quote. But when we think about what we do have control over, we have control over the sentences in our mind. And when we have sentences that are negative or hurtful, detrimental, when we think about self-compassion, it's like becoming this observer of our thoughts, in this like just getting to know our thoughts, like, oh wow, that's a thought. Because when you think about beliefs, like, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking. So if a thought is just a sentence in your mind, and then you can change your thought, because we all have the power to change our thoughts. We are in control of our thoughts. We might get caught up in this like thought loop, and it's hard for us to get out of it. But there are tools and skills that we can really work on, deep breathing or meditation, or it could be something else for you that you have found that might help you get out of that like detrimental thought loop, like downward spiral. It could be journaling, it could be gardening, it could be talking to a friend, it could be cooking, whatever. But I just absolutely love and believe and just think and talk about this concept that thoughts are sentences in our brain, and that when we just literally listen to our thoughts, instead of being mad at our thoughts, like, oh my God, I should go outside, it's so nice out, why am I lying on the couch? Just think, okay, it's really nice outside right now. I'm actually feeling like I need to rest. I know it's sunny, and there's this idea that we should go out if it's sunny, but I'm actually feeling more comfortable and healthy sitting on my couch and resting. than taking a nap or reading or watching TV or whatever. And I'm not going to get mad at myself for not doing something I think I, quote, should be doing. Because if we really wanted to do something, we would do it. So, but again, like when you think about self-compassion and think about your thoughts in your mind. So my question to you is like, what is one thing that's detrimental that you say to yourself in your mind all the time? And really not being mad at yourself for that, but just like observing that and kind of like going deeper and thinking like, well, okay, where does this thought come from? It's a sentence. It's a sentence that I can change, but also just being super compassionate and being non-judgmental and just being kind and observing and thinking about that. And then maybe journaling about it, writing it down, writing that hurtful or detrimental thought down on paper and just exploring that with just like absolute like gentleness, kindness, non-judgment, and just considering it like, why am I saying this? Where does this come from? Do I want to be thinking this? Like, what's something else that might serve me better to think? And that, I believe, is an act of self-compassion. When you are taking time to get to know yourself and your thoughts and considering your thoughts and not getting mad at your thoughts, but just exploring and just getting to know yourself. So I think, like one thing that I just would love to offer, like as we're just kind of like wrapping it up right now, is there's so many different things, going back to like the self-love and self-care, that I think we feel maybe a little bit more, I'm generalizing here, but because I feel that those are more popular terms, with the common folk, that we might have a practice already in place, or we know what we do to ourselves to love ourselves or to, take care of ourselves. But when we think about self-compassion, I really would love for you to think about the word compassion and think about like today, like what is literally one thing that you could do today that you could be more compassionate with yourself. So I don't know if anyone, watching live or watching on the replay feels comfortable writing that in the comments, but I would love to hear what's one thing that you could do to be more compassionate with yourself today. And again, when we think about, and we all, we're such complex creatures, and you can come up with your own definition that really feels right to you. But just going off of Kristin Neff's 3 components, it's self-kindness and being gentle and understanding with yourselves, this recognition of common humanity and feeling connected with others, and we're not alone, and we're not, isolated, and don't alienate yourself with your own pain. And then also mindfulness and just having this awareness of not being the extreme of shutting down your feelings or the extreme of totally like exaggerating it, but just being super mindful, and balanced with that. So again, I would really just love for you to consider self-compassion and think about today, what is one thing that you could do to be more compassionate with yourself? And if you feel comfortable sharing in the comments, I would love to read. If not, no big deal. So you guys, that's my overview of self-compassion. I do have a few next steps for you. So if you have a couple minutes, don't jump off yet. But I just wanted to say I'm so, so, so grateful that you guys are here. I'm stoked to be back on Wednesdays with these Facebook Lives. And I could talk about self-compassion all day long. So if you want to email me, info@thewellnessheadquarters.com, and talk to me about self-compassion, let's do it. Cause I'm ready. It's like, I'm obsessed with it. We all need more self-compassion. We all need to learn to this practice of being compassionate towards ourselves and our thoughts. And Um, okay, so what are our next steps? So our next steps are that this live is going to be ready for replay in just a few minutes after we say farewell, and Facebook kind of like does its thing. So if you have like friends or family or whatever, anyone that you think that might be interested in learning about self-compassion, please tag them or share the link with them. Invite them to like Alyssa at Wellness HQ, because this is where I'm doing the Facebook Lives. I've been doing the Facebook Lives. Also, yesterday, if you are on if you get my weekly newsletter, I did a whole kind of personal post about my recent breakdown and breakthrough, and then focusing on self-compassion. So you can find that on my website. My website is thewellnessheadquarters.com. That's all spelled out. So it's thewellnessheadquarters.com/post/breakdowns and breakthroughs. thewellnessheadquarters.com /post/breakdowns and breakthroughs. So then next Wednesday, I'm back with another free live workshop, and we're going to be talking about setting and keeping goals during uncertainty. So this could be, life is always uncertain. So this topic can be applied at any time. But I'm excited to dive deep with setting and keeping goals during uncertainty, because I think a lot of people are really challenged by that right now. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And then, you guys, I created a survey. Like literally, it's like a 3-minute survey. My mom took it and timed it. It took her a minute and a half, but I'm just saying 3 minutes, just because some people might want to take longer. So I really want to know what you want from me and how I can help you. I care so deeply about you guys, and I care about you and your health, and I would love to hear from you about how I can be most helpful right now. So I created a 3-minute survey, and I'd love for you to take it. I'd be so grateful if you would take the survey, because the more I hear about what you want and what you're interested in, the more I can help you. So I'm going to post the link in the comments. I'm also going to post this in my private Facebook group that all you have to do is ask to join. But I'm also going to post it here on my Facebook page. So I'd be so grateful. I want to hear where you guys are at, hear what you guys are looking for, and just be super thankful if you take 3 minutes to tell me what you want. Because here I am for you I want to help you and be here for you, and be just be a source of love and support and expertise and guidance. So we're wrapping up for today's conversation about self-compassion. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Alyssa Abrahamson, and I'm a nutritional therapist and wellness coach. And today is Wednesday, and it's April 22nd. And I really hope that you have a beautiful day, and that you are going to really consider today about how is one thing you can do, how you can be compassionate with yourself today. And I would love to hear about it. So keep in touch, and I'll see you guys next week at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye, guys.